How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In this video we are going to talk about the recent short film that I put out. It was really fun. I learned about some systems in there that we're going to talk about in this video. So some people asked me to talk about the Calanthe monster after I did the Eye of Calanthe reaction. So we're going to talk about that in the first part, and in the second part we're going to talk about Echo and how I got her to behave and use all the particles and all the animations that I use for this short. But before we start with the video, as always, let me thank everyone who supports the channel in the Patreon. Remember, there are 2 levels, and as always, if you're in the second level, you get a shout out right here on screen. There's also the join button. Now, if you don't want to do Patreon and you want to do the join button, it does have the same perks as my 2 levels of Patreon. The only difference is YouTube gives you some emojis as well. Now you can also follow me on Twitter, and there's the Discord if you have any questions. All right, let's get right into the video. And let's talk about the monster. So the monster, once you open the file, you'll see that the monster is not here. And it's just this empty environment with a cave, very cool looking cave with some volumetrics. Let's actually take a look at the volumetrics first. So if we go into how they did this, this is Unreal Engine 5, mind you, and we are using Lumen. If you go into the light source, you can see that they do have the indirect lighting intensity up to 20. So they are pretty much using this as their fill light. And volumetric scattering intensity is all the way up to 4. The default is 1. And as you can see, it got rid of the God rays that we had there. But if I go all the way to 4, you can see all those God rays over there. And if you want to make something like this, remember, you need exponential high fog. So for this, from the looks of it, they didn't change as much, just the fog density that you see right here, it's 0.05. And as always, if you want to get that volumetric effect, you'll have to take volumetric fog, and they did change this albedo a little bit. But other than that, nothing too fancy, but it makes things look so good. Atmospherics always make your scene look so much better. All right, now onto the monster, how we get the monster to be in here. If you go into characters, I'm not gonna pronounce this name, but this is the name of the monster. And you see that you have a blueprint with the monster. So if we go into the blueprint, you can see that we do have the monster here, and we do have the alien rig. So it does have a control rig, which is this one right here, that you can call in sequencer, and that way you can use and animate the monster here inside sequencer. But what I did for the short is I used the animations that are already in there. So now let's take a look at the monster first. So if we put it here, one of the things that you're going to see about this monster that is so particular, and something that you rarely see in character assets used in Unreal, is the Polycount. So if I go into, let me isolate this guy. So if you want to isolate anything in Unreal Engine, just right click, visibility, show only selected, and there you go, we isolated the monster. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to go into wireframe. If you go into wireframe, you can see how high poly this guy is. So yep, let's take a look. Let me use my camera, and you can see that this creature is really high poly. Even the, I'm gonna call these the saliva bits that you see around here, they are geometry and they are animated. But what surprised me the most about this monster is how high poly it is. And this is one of the things that makes this production ready. You usually see the assets that are for a game engine much lower than this. And this guy's not being nanite because he or it is a skeletal mesh. So this is definitely not being nanite, and it performs pretty well. I think, let me see in frames per second. They're fine, even with everything else on, I think it was fine. So as you can see, do you usually need this much geometry? That's the question. Do we need this much geometry for a character in Unreal Engine to be production ready? And I guess the answer is always, it depends. So let me get everyone back. So it depends on what you want to do with it. Let me put him in under the light. Or there you go. Okay. Just play with him right here. I'm gonna move the light a little bit. There you go. Awesome. So now we can actually see the whole monster. One of the things about Polycount in Unreal Engine, if you're not a 3D artist, is the higher the polycounts on your character, the smoother your character is going to look. So that's why usually game characters look pretty well from afar, but if you start getting close and close and close, you're going to start to see some jagged edges because that's where the polygons end, because they made it like poly. So a good example for that would be The Witcher 3. I think The Witcher 3 is a fantastic looking game for its age, even though it was released a very long ago now. They do have very, very good looking character, but once you see them up close in the cinematics or when they're talking, you can see that Geralt's armor is a little bit jagged because of that polycount. So that's okay because it's a video game and it's running in real time, and you want the game to run in all sort of consoles, not only on high-end PCs. So that's why developers do that. But if you're doing something for a cinematic, if you're doing a short film like I'm trying to do, having a high poly character does help a lot. And I'm pretty sure the character that that girl that they used for that short film, The Eye of Calanthe, is also very high poly because how good she looked on there. You can see it in this monster, how good he looks just with the high poly count, and it's also the shaders. So the shaders that they use is actually pretty good, and as you can see is broken down into several shaders right here on my right. So we have the limbs, so let's take a look at the limbs. One of the things I want to show you, and probably if you're not a 3D artist, this won't be super interesting, but the reason I want to show you this is because of how things are packed here. So he is divided into several materials. Now, when you're in a video game, the more materials you have, the more draw calls, the more performance it takes. In this case, again, we're in a production setting, we're in a film setting, we're not caring that much about that, and we're not having a million of these characters all around. So we're not going to be worrying a lot about the draw calls. That's why he has several material elements over here. We're gonna do the same thing with the character that I'll be creating for my later short film. So he is going to have more material elements. And in case you're not a 3D artist, the reason why we want more material elements is because that will allow us to have a much better resolution. When you are doing the texturing for a character, if you do it in one material, that means that your UVs are going to be, let's say, not stretched out, because they shouldn't be stretched out. They're going to be scaled a little bit smaller on your UV sheet, and the smaller your UV pieces, the less resolution they're going to get. So if you can divide your character into various pieces, that's only going to help you to get a better looking character. All right, so that is the monster right here. Now I'm going to delete this skeletal mesh, and we're going to take a look at the monster as if it was made for the short. So if you want to take a look at that, you go to content, character, you go to animations, and you're going to see that you don't have your regular animations here. You do have a level sequence. Each level sequence is an animation, and I'm going to show you right now. So if we double click this one, it's going to take us to the sequence. We click on this little camera, it's going to lock us into the camera. We want cinematic viewport, there you go. So we are in the camera, as you can see, he's just walking around here. So that is the walk. And let me show you another one. The stand's pretty cool. This is another sequence that I use for my short film. I think I used them all except for idle. So as you can see, he goes up and he roars. This is exactly what I used on that little short film. And you might be wondering how I use this, because these are sequences. How are you going to use them on a separate environment, on a separate scenario? Well, it's very easy. Let me show you right now how to do that. So let's go into, not this one, let's use the crawl. The reason why I'm going to use the crow is because he has movement. So as you can see, he has movement that it's baked in there. And now, a couple of things that you could do is, and one of the things that I did is get rid of the transformation keys. So he is being transformed forward while he moves. What I did is I got rid of that. That way I could only have him walking around. So what I'm gonna do is, let's see, we're no longer in camera. We're going to go into the control rig. So as you can see, if you go into the control rig, you get instantly this window right here, which highlights all the controls, animations, and all that. So when you're into the control rig, you can see that you have controls for the limbs, but the one that we want to erase the keys from is the control that's actually translating our character forward. So that'll be the global control. So offset control, let's see. This is just a root control, and we have the global control. So we're going to delete these, because once we do that, then the monster will no longer be translating forward, and we can have an animation in place so we can use later. However, if you want to use the motion forward, you can probably skip this step and just go a little bit further in the video where I show you how to bake this into a regular skeletal mesh animation. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab everything here. Let's see, we have rotation, and we deleted all those, and as you can see, he is right here. Now if I were to move, he is doing his animation in place. So pretty much how would you animate a creature for a video game? This is how you usually do it. You animate it in place, you do the root motion with your controller, and that way you can move the creature if this were your character, your controllable character. The reason why I deleted those keys is because he's not going to be in this environment. He's going to be in a different setting, in a different position. So this was just going to make my life painful. Now, after we've deleted those, all we have to do is you go right click on the blueprint. You're going to see that there is an option that says create animation assets. So you can create a linked animation sequence, and it's going to ask you where you're going to put it. I'm just going to throw it in the same folder. I'm going to call it crawl. I'll click OK. And let's see, export transforms, export curves. I left this in default. Click on export animation. And it's going to take a little bit, and then you can see the animation happening. Just like any other animation that you would make in Unreal. And if you want to look for it, all we have to do is go here, rig, and there you go. Here is the animation that you can add like any other animation that you've utilized in Unreal Engine. And again, if you need those transformations that he was doing over here, just keep them, and all you have to do is do that bake, and you get this animation right here. That's all I did to get that monster to animate in that little short film. Okay, now what we are going to talk about Echo. This is my favorite pose right here from the short film. And what we're going to talk about is how I got her to this state, because this isn't the skeletal mesh. You can't just throw in the skeletal mesh because it doesn't come with the grooms. And I'm going to show you how I got this orb. This is actually from, if you have used that map, the Valley of the Ancients. So most of the things that I have for her regarding animations and particles are from the Valley of the Ancients. Now these were not easy to get out of there because some of them are part of these plugin content that they designed for Unreal Engine 5. So I'll show you how to get them, and we're going to talk about some of the animations that I used here for Echo. And as you can see, this is the monster dying. It's one of the animations that I baked the same way that I did in the beginning of the video. Now let's go to the basics of her, and I'm actually going to make a new level, new quick level like this, nothing fancy. And we're going to go to content, and I have her on Echo content, because for this I'm using Echo, the Windwalker project. You can actually create an Unreal Engine 5 project for that, and I just migrated it to this project so everything is under the same file. Now, you can see here that you do have some blueprints, and you have this one, which is the one that you would use if you want to actually play with a controller with her. So actually like an in-game character. This one is if you want to use live link. So that would be, let's just throw it in here. So the live link would be if you have any motion capture data, any live motion capture data that you want to do, this will be the one to use. And then you have the one that I created, which is none of these. It's actually over here in characters, echo, meshes. This is the blueprint that I created. So it's kind of based on the configuration of the live link blueprint. The only difference is it doesn't have any of the live link or the controllers. It's just the skeletal mesh with the grooms. Now, the thing about using just the skeletal mesh is this is the skeletal mesh for echo. You have no hair and no eyebrows, which doesn't look good. Now you could use this hair and just, I don't know, let's do it to none because this is just for demonstration purposes. There you go. So you could use that. I was not very fond of this one. I don't think this is a groom. I think this is made with hair cards. And you probably have to tinker with the... Now, that being said, I much rather use this one. This is a very cool groom, also with her eyebrows. So that's actually how I constructed. But if you want, feel free to use this one. It gives her kind of like this wisdom kind of look because it looks like white hair. Anyways, let's get rid of that. And what I'm going to show you is how I created this blueprint. And by using the regular skeletal mesh, you'll be able to use control rig. So you don't have to worry about adding control rig or anything of that nature. Just throw this character into sequencer and off you go. So as you can see, what we have here is a default scene root. We have our skeletal mesh, and then we have two grooms. Okay, so I'm going to show you, and let's just make it from scratch because that's the easier way to show you how I did it. So right click, blueprint class, actor, give it a name, and of course opened it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to throw in echo in here. I'm just going to leave her name as it is. And again, we don't have any grooms or any eyebrows. So we're going to go into echo hair, and here they are. Now these you cannot drag and drop. So if I were to drag and drop, nothing's going to happen. You need to add it as component. So what I'm going to do is add, go to, groom. There you go. We got one groom. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the asset to this element right here. Sorry, not this. This is material. We're going to have the groom asset over here. So we bring it over here. There you go. We have our groom asset. Now this groom is not going to follow the head. This is actually going to follow the root from the skeleton. So if she turns her head, it's actually not going to look right. So the way that we get around that is we parent the groom to echo, and then over here we'll look for head. Or you can just tie it to another bone that you want. I think head is the most appropriate one. And after you do that, it's going to flip. But to fix it, all we have to do is make sure that angle snap is on, turn it 90 degrees. And for the location, I found that weird because the Z-axis is up, but here you have to use the X-axis. So I'm going to type -152, which is her height. And there you go. I am using NVIDIA GeForce Experience, and the 2 times that I've tried to record this, anytime that I try to add the eyebrows, it crashes, so I'm not gonna do that. But just so you know that the eyebrows, they go in the same way that the hair goes in. So you're gonna parent, you're gonna add a groom asset, you're gonna parent that to echo, then you're just going to drag this one instead of the hair, and then you're gonna parent it to the head bone, okay? So once you've done that, you're going to get something like this. which is what I've been using on my level. Okay, so this is echo, and you can toss it into sequencer if you want. Let's create a level sequence, so let's call it test. And I'm going to grab her character, throw it in here. As you can see, there's nothing in there, but you can just drag your transforms, which is very essential. You can also add control rig. So you go here, you go as a base control rig, and you have your echo control rig. And after that, there you go. We have our echo control rig, including the facial rig, and you can just move her and do keyframe animation. Now, the other thing is the animations from echo. As you can see, if you go into the Valley of the Ancients, you're not going to find these animations on the regular folder. These animations are under the plugin folder, which you need to export and bring in a little bit of a different way. I'm going to show it to you with the particle effects. So if we go, not this one, we go this one, we have the core, which I use for her. We have the hit, which I use for when she actually hits the monster. We also have the charge. I brought it here. The reason why I didn't end up using the charge is because the way that it's made is made to point into the center of the universe, and you just move this. I'm pretty sure they use some kind of blueprint program to get it to stick to Echo's hand when she's moving. I don't know how to do that, and that didn't affect the short film that I was making, so I decided not to use that. If you do use that, share it on Discord. I'd like to see how you fix that and how you made this usable in a cinematic. The issue is I'm not familiar with Niagara very much, so I wouldn't know which values to tinker. All right, so we are in the Valley of the Ancients project. So I'm not gonna load the map because that is not necessary for this tutorial. I'm just going to show you what you need to do with the folders in order to migrate them correctly. If we go into the ancient content and we'll look for characters, we'll look for echo, and we'll look for animations, you're gonna see that you just have the locomotion animations, if you wanna call it that. So you have the idle to walk forward, you have the walk forward. I think there's the vault over. There's the idle and the idle and all that. I migrated these. You can just migrate these the regular way by right-clicking the folder, migrate, and you're good to go. Now, the other animations, as you saw, are not here. Neither are the VFX that I just showed you. So if we go into the ancient contents and we go into effects, you're gonna see that we have the campfire, the drone, which is that little thing that you click. If you've used this project before, you know what I mean. We also have some fog. These are a different kind of fog that we will talk about later. I'll probably use it for my short film. We have some footsteps and the portal. Now, these effects do migrate as well as the animations, but we don't have the other effects that I talked about. Now, I know there's this folder here, but that's because of the trial and error that I was doing. One of the issues that will come, and the way to activate those, by the way, is going into the plugin content, and the way that you access those is by going into the ancient battle content folder. If you don't have this folder, all you have to do is click on settings, make sure you have show plugin content, and this folder should appear. Now, as you can see, this folder right here is the one with all the cool stuff. So we have the laser. This one actually didn't export like I wanted to, so I didn't use that. But all the other ones, like the core that I use, some of the dust and all that, they're all here. Like if you go into Niagara, that's where all the echo particles are at. And the way that you're going to migrate this is a little different. And let me explain the reason why. Because if you were to just go into the folder of ancient content, right click and migrate, once you have this folder in your other project, all the assets will be broken. What I mean is they will be functional, but their materials will not be combined with the respective particle effects. So hence you'll have a flat plane doing nothing, or you have a particle effect with no actual effects because it's not referencing the correct material with the correct flipbook and all that. So you could do that by hand. That's just gonna take a while. Now I saw this in the forum. Shout out to whoever made this on the Unreal forum. I tried to access that again and I couldn't. It gives me a 505 error. But you know who you are if you made this. Thank you for making this. I'm just gonna showcase it on the video. So the way that you would do this is, and I'd suggest you close it. You close both of your project. Is, as you can see, we have both folders here. So this is the project that I want to migrate things to. And this is the project that we're migrating things from. So the Valley of the Ancients into the file with the monster. The way that you would do that is you go into where these are located. So the easiest way to locate this is to right click and you go into Show and Explorer. And there you go. So this is what we need to migrate. Now you could just migrate the whole thing. However, when I did, I had some problems with this folder. It kept getting me an error and wouldn't let me in. I know it was this folder because it was referencing it on the error file. But all you have to do is actually migrate the ancient battle content. If you want, you can just create a plugin folder, then a game feature folder, and just toss it in. And that way it will show up into your project like it did on mine. So if we go back over here, then you can see that it is actually part of my plugin content. It's right here. This is not the content that we're gonna use because this is part of the plugin. This should be referenced via blueprint. So we're not done yet. What you're gonna do now is after you do that, then you're going to right click, use migrate, and that's what you're gonna do. And it should be right here on your regular content folder, ready for you to use. So if I go, it's right here. So that's how I migrated. I know it's a weird workaround, but that's the only way that I found how to migrate these particle effects without things being broken. And I use the same way for the migration of the animations. Now, if you do have a better workaround for that, because what I did was pretty long, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm really interested to see if there's an easier way to do this. Now, what we're gonna do is I'm going to show you a little bit of things that I made on Sequencer. So we're not gonna save that. Now, let's see, cinematics, final shots. So this is my favorite part of the whole short. So as you can see, what I did is I do have several camera cuts. And one of the best parts about using Movie Render Queue is that if you have several camera cuts, it will instantly go into each camera cut and render it just the same way that you have it arranged right here. The other way to do something like this is by using master sequence as opposed to level sequence. I've not found the master sequence useful for myself. Probably other people like to use that because I do my camera cuts and I just paste everything together in After Effects. So if you're probably doing it for a video game or you just want to take it out here and make it work right out of the box, probably going with master sequences will be fine. But the way that I found things is just easier for me to do it this way. Now, regarding the particle effects, so let's turn this off. There you go. What I have here for the particle effects is I had to do a lot of keyframing to make sure the particle was on her hand, and then she tossed it over. And the other thing is, for the particle, I didn't have to initialize it because this isn't a particle that has to start. It's a particle that's functioning all the time. So all I did is I just used visibility with it and turn it on when I needed to, and the rest of the movie, this particle effect is off. And as you can see, this monster looks amazing. You can see the little bits of saliva, I'm presuming that is. And they are geometry. So it looks really gross, but again, that's part of the monster. It looks really cool. And I think these animations that it has, the way it dies is really nice as well. The camera animations is the same way that I've shown all the time. There's nothing much there other than I probably use a longer focal length. So for this one, I use 50. Some of the other scenes, I'm using 70. Some of the close-ups with echo, I'm using 70. But for the most part, I'm using that to get a better depth of field. And another thing that's different here that I have not used before, but I found it very useful, is I am using manual exposure. The reason I started using manual exposure is back when I started using Path Tracer. I'm not using Path Tracer here. That thing is broken in Unreal Engine 5. But what I do is I got used to just doing manual exposure. So as you can see, we have metering mode, manual, and I just have some compensation. And I play with the camera exposure as well, just to guarantee that things are rendering fine and I don't have to worry about different kinds of exposure later on. All right, everybody, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end. If you found this useful, please leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel. And if you have a little bit of spare change, you can join the Patreon or use the join button. It gives you the same perks as the Patreon, plus the emojis that comes with YouTube. If there are other things that you want me to talk about that you saw in this short that I didn't talk about, please let me know in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to share that with y'all. And I'll see you in the next video.